Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this edition of Hypnosis Week Live. Yes, it's me again, Alex William Smith, better known to many of you under my stage name, Jonathan Royal, the British bad boy of hypnosis. Anyway, enough about me. Once again, I'm delighted to be able to welcome to the show a guest of great standing in the industry. In particular, recently, he's just been made the director of UK and international havening. Prior to that, he was already the certified havening trainer for Ireland. If you're watching this and you're thinking, what's havening? Don't worry, you're going to learn all about that during the next hour. Although some of you may have noticed, you've Stephen around on the internet, I'd be surprised if you hadn't. Or you may have encountered havening through Three Things That Can Change Your Life, the book by Paul McKenna, or maybe one of Paul McKenna's television appearances, because in recent times, the thing he's really been talking about, raving about, and Deming has been havening. So can we please welcome to the show, all the way from Ireland, Stephen Travers. Good day to you, sir.
Good day, Alex, and thank you for having me.
No worries. Now, look, let's dive straight in. As I ask, there's a question I ask everyone at the beginning, a question I ask everyone at the end. What happens in the middle is unique and distinctive to where this just naturally flows. But to start with, you today, as we record this on the 3rd of February 2020, are the director of UK and international havening. You are the certified havening trainer for Ireland. You are therefore kind of at the top of the pyramid, as it were, for this technique havening. You also do advertise the fact that you do hypnotherapy and hypnosis as well on your website, which is stravershypnosis.com. The link will be below the video. But at some point, you didn't do any of them. You were, like us all, normal, so to speak. What was your journey to get to where you are now? What led you to where you are?
Well, I was always interested in psychology, even as a teenager, in how the human mind worked and human behavior. And I ended up working in my 20s in sales and marketing. Okay. I was very interested in the psychology behind sales and marketing. So I was a sales trainer and a sales coach for companies like ESAP British Telecom in Ireland, Sky, and National Directory Inquiries. So I did that for many years and I really enjoyed it. I was quite good at it. But I started developing anxiety and panic attacks myself.
Okay.
So I was really at a point as well in my career where I wanted to change. So I knew a bit about psychotherapy, counseling from my interest in psychology. And I knew about hypnosis as well. And
well, can I ask, did at the time you developed these anxiety attacks, did you consciously realize why? Was it like having to make deadlines, sales deadlines or targets or anything like that?
When I look back, yes, I was very driven. I would class myself as quite a driven person. And yeah, I was just working too hard. I was in my 20s. I was probably playing too hard as well and burning the candles at both ends. And one day when I was doing a sales call, I had a full-blown panic attack in front of a customer.
Yeah.
It really shook me. I thought I was dying.
Okay. So yeah, that would be
pretty scary, you know, the normal things that happen with a panic attack. My heart was palpitating. I started feeling dizzy. I was getting tingly feelings. I felt trapped. I felt this sense of impending doom. So it really scared me. And I ended up going to the doctor. And yeah, the GP, you know, he diagnosed it. It's anxiety, panic attacks. And he advised that I went to see a counsellor. But I didn't necessarily want to go in and talk about the anxiety or go through weeks and months of counselling. So I started looking at hypnosis. I knew a bit about hypnosis already, and especially NLP, because a lot of our sales training was using NLP.
Yeah,
They
like the sensory systems, VACOG, and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, hypnotic language patterns, and how to communicate with people in a more persuasive way, because obviously that's what salespeople learn how to do, to communicate more effectively. And I was already interested in, very interested in personal development, and had an interest in hypnosis because I was using some self-help stuff on myself with CDs and audios. Okay. So I decided, after doing some research, that I would do a hypnotherapy training in Ireland and kill two birds with the one stone by, hopefully, at the time, I was hoping that hypnotherapy would help me resolve my own anxiety issue and find out what was really going on and causing it, and learn how to, use hypnosis as well and hypnotherapy.
So how did that go for you then?
It went very well. However, at the beginning, I wasn't a great hypnotic subject. I was kind of that anxious. I was difficult to work with. So if I was sitting with a trainee therapist, I found it difficult to relax. Mm-hmm. I was quite hypervigilant, and I was worried what the hypnotist or the trainee hypnotherapist would say or might put into my head. So that was my anxiety coming out. I was fearful that they might put a bad suggestion in. So I found that using CDs, and that's when I started using, it was actually one of Paul McKenna's CDs I started using, because he was bringing out tracks back then. That was in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I found the CDs quite good, because once I listened to them once or twice, and I knew what suggestions were on them, I could then just let go with the CD. But when I was working with a live hypnotherapist, my brain was always like, well, what's coming next? But I found then through the CDs and doing the training course, my anxiety and the panic attacks stopped. And I found that emotional equilibrium again. It helped me heal, really.
Cool. Which is interesting, because Sigmund Freud, as more people probably recognise it, was famous for saying that therapists, generally speaking, are merely searching for an answer to their own problems, or at least they are initially when they get into it. So it's interesting how many people I've interviewed who said that what led them into this industry was dealing with their own phobias, anxieties, stresses, or whatever. So you've got yourself sorted, you've become a qualified, and I do that not to poo-poo but there is no such thing as a recognised qualified bit of paper for hypnosis, certainly not in England or Europe, but you become a qualified, as it is perceived to be, hypnotherapist, and I guess you start seeing clients, did you then? Or
yes, well, originally, like I did train under a guy, I don't know if you know him, Dr. Joseph Keeney, and I trained with the Institute of Clinical Hypnotherapy and Psychotherapy.
I've heard of him, yeah.
Yeah, so I do think, there is warrant to qualifications, and I do think there are different standards in training. But look, I appreciate your point that I suppose the whole therapy profession is unregulated in the UK and Ireland. So is that the point you're making about the...
No, I'll just say, I always say when it comes to qualifications, the simple fact is the piece of papers, it may as well be toilet tissue. Its only real worth is of a placebo on the wall to convince clients that you've done some recognised training. And the truth is, in my experience, and I doubt there's anyone done more courses than me over the years. Can I make it a point if I'm going to criticise something, I do it. As you can see in the diplomas folder on Facebook, I mean, literally, you name it, all these winky wanky boys clubs, General Hypnotherapy, Standards Council, GHR, and you name it, I've done them. And my experience is that there's people out there you've never heard of, who are not regulated by these people, who are far better therapists and trainers than a lot of the people who've paid out the thousands to buy into a glorified multi-level marketing scheme, which it is with things like NLP, and for that matter, it is with a lot of hypnotherapy training. Do your course now, pay us some more. You've done an advance, pay us some more. Now you can be a trainer and go out there and start teaching people when you haven't actually done anything yourself in the real world. That's why I say it's all one. But at the end of the day, all of that isn't me criticising the industry, because the fact is, you know, even someone who's a crap trainer, if the student takes it on board and goes out and practices in the real world, the more they do, they start learning when they actually start treating clients, I think. They'll learn more from actually helping people than they ever will on any course. So, and if they get results for clients, what's it matter how they got them?
Yeah, and I take your point about certificates on the wall. I don't know if you've ever looked at Robert Cialdini's research. Robert Cialdini's an expert on influence and persuasion. He's an academic.
Oh sorry, I pronounce his name different. Robert Cialdini. The persuasion book, the famous one.
Yes, and his research shows that even if you're, you know, a medical doctor or any type of health professional, if you put certificates on your wall, clients tend to follow your instructions more. They're more compliant. So he's done research on that. So it's interesting. Yeah. So that, I suppose, that placebo idea, which is really an authority principle, can transfer to many industries and professions.
Oh yeah. It's not just us. I mean, literally, it's pretty much every profession. I agree. Which is why I tend to say to people, and it's not just hypno related. I tend to say just because they've got a bit of paper on the wall doesn't necessarily mean they're good at what they're doing.
Right.
It just means they had enough money to do that course. Because sadly, and it's not just the hypnotherapy and complementary alternative medicine industries. I've spoke to lawyers who say, yes, all right, you do have to do exams and memorize certain stuff and this, that, the other. But the manner in which it's done, there's a lot of them that may, shall we say, just pay people to do the coursework for them that gets submitted. There's always a way around. Anyway, we're going off track slightly, because my point is the bits of paper are not what matters. What matters is the technique or the therapist, and what you're actually doing. So you started treating people. What were you naturally drawn to? What did you enjoy treating most with clients?
Well, I started back in around 2004 to 2005, and yeah, the internet was only really starting to come on board or come online. So I really started working mostly with stop smoking and weight loss at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the main things I did, simply because for my business to function, that was the most two popular niches at the time that people were actually going to see hypnotherapists for. And what I found over the last, certainly over the last 7 years, that a lot of people now come to see hypnotherapists and therapists because of anxiety related issues. So I found, even when I was working with smoking clients, and especially weight loss ones as well, that it was really anxiety or some sort of unresolved stress in their past was part of their problem. So I obviously trained through the hypnotherapy for the anxiety. So I ended up, even though they're coming in for smoking or weight loss, I was often working on the anxiety end of things and the stress end of things with them to help treat the symptom, be it overeating, over drinking, smoking. Mm-hmm. So I eventually then just moved into niching it more into the whole anxiety area and anxiety-based disorders.
Well, that's cool, because I think that's important what you just mentioned there about the smoking they came with, but that's really just a symptom of something that's caused them, triggered them to want to smoke or use that as a smoke screen, as some people say. So you've got to find the root cause, not necessarily through regression. There's approaches out there, analytical hypnosis, where they have people free associating until they have this cathartic moment of this is what caused it. And I frankly call that mind rape, and think that there's no need to book clients through that kind of trauma, which I know to some degree you must be on a similar kind of thought pattern with that, because from what I know about Havening, it is definitely not about having people relive things again and again and again and what I call mind raping them. In fact, it's quite the opposite, isn't it?
Yes, you're right. We look at, if you want to simplify it, there's the cause and the symptom. So the anxiety-based symptoms are really an expression or a symptom of something else. So we do go looking for the root cause, and we look for something called an encoding moment when that person got traumatized. And there's a lot of neuroscience and neurobiology behind havening. And what we do is we teach therapists or people, or even our own clients, how to pinpoint and identify what's causing the symptoms. Then we use there's many different havening techniques, but there's something called event havening that we would use to clear the root cause trauma or the traumatic memory or the encoding moment.
It's that event havening what Paul McKenna does on his disc DVD that he gives out with various of his books.
Yes, that's event havening you're seeing there.
So if you actually want to see it I'm sure on Stephen's YouTube channel, no doubt there's relevant videos. I just mentioned Paul because I've seen that video.
Yeah.
I know there will be ones of Stephen as well if you want to see it in action. If I'm right, then, if my memory serves me right, trying to show that I've done my research and studied, but I might be slightly wrong with this, so you can correct me in a minute, Stephen. You can tell me off. Give me red crosses for getting it wrong. But roughly, essentially, what I recall seeing on the DVD was that, which was meant to be used by me at home or you at home, was the idea that you're supposed to close your eyes, take a few moments to get a sense and a feeling of that bothered you in the past. When it was at its kind of worst, so that on the SUD, sensory units of distress scale, you could give it a number. So let's say it's 10 out of 10. It's really, really bad. That the thoughts, memories, emotions, and links to it. And then you would hug yourself, literally arms like so, and gently, my hand, I'm trying to move to the side, gently rubbing up and down the side of the body on both sides, but at the same time. And whilst doing that in that sort of strange, and it is quite disorientating, which in itself is quite hypnotic.
I have to stop you there, Alex. That's not the way we do it.
It's the way, well,
it's not.
It's what Paul's doing on that bloody DVD. It is. He's hugging and he's doing that, rubbing up and down the side there.
The havening, can I do a quick demo?
Yeah, go on,
please.
From the
top of the shoulder down to your elbow. So you're not rubbing anywhere on
all right, well, that's more, right. Well, look, I said,
yeah.
You know what? They both work.
Yeah.
It worked for me. I was probably doing it wrong when I was watching the mirror image on the DVD. But you're right, you've got that rubbing element. Then it was in the order of BLS. And I remember that as big load of shit. And that's not being derogatory. Just I find everything to do with mind therapy traces back to shit. And I don't mean it doesn't work. I just mean as a memory aid, it's amazingly easy. Because BLS, big load of shit, BLS, beach, lawn, stairs. And in order, he had us, as we're doing the rubbing, first of all, it's going to count from 1 to 10, and we're walking along a beach, and we're looking forward, and we've got to go right, left with the old eyeballs.
Yeah.
As counting 1 to 10 and rubbing. and then it's essentially, I suppose you would call in NLP break state slightly, because you kind of stop doing that for a moment, and then it's the same thing done again, the rubbing with the eye movements left to right, counting 1 to 10, imagining walking across a morning lawn with dew on the grass. And then it was the same thing again after breaking state, with going down a set of stairs. Certainly is on the DVD, hence beach lawn stairs. I remember it as big load of shit. And just to clarify, before Stephen tells me what bits I've missed out, and just to illustrate that I'm not like poo-pooing, excuse the pun, this will become relevant in a minute, but there's different brainwave states, beta, alpha, theta, delta, and I remember the order of them as BAT, bat, and then D for dung, bat shit. So I easily remember the order, beta, alpha, theta, delta. Also in the human givens approach, which I think is very relevant to Havening, they talk about either taming your ape, the wild animal's got to be tamed, so the wild animal's the problem, the anxiety or whatever, and you've got to tame it so it doesn't bother you the way it did, or you've got to turn it into a pet. Both of those, ape tamed is ape-T, or a pet, A-P-E-T. Animals do a lot of shitting. Easy way to remember it. So a pet, which stands for activating agent, the trigger, which pattern matches in the brain and goes, oh yeah, this seems something like my memory of that, and that's where panic can set in, because like rape victims, if they see somebody with the same kind of haircut as the assailant, they can pattern match and immediately start having the PTSD reaction, even though logically it's not that person, but the pattern match is there, which immediately creates the emotion, in this case fear or anxiety, and that immediately creates a thought. The thought creates the action is to be scared, want to run away, fight or flight. And if you can change the activating agent, or rather take the activating agent so that when it is seen, heard, felt, experienced, the pattern matching, the image becomes something different that has no negative connotations whatsoever, then the emotion is no longer going to be negative, it's going to be positive, which means the thought that's created is going to be the opposite of that bothered them in the past, which means the end result is they no longer have the issue. That's how all the using shit as a memory aid links together, before Stephen corrects me on the bits I've missed out there. The only bit to say is that at the end, after the beach, lawn and stairs, on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 being no issue whatsoever, 10 up there, the worst it ever was. You said before it was a number 10, a number 9 or whatever. How much lower down is it now? And if need be, the cycle is done again until the number comes down. Well, at least that's on the DVD is how Paul puts it across. He does point out, obviously, if I was with you in person, this could be even more effective. But, I mean, what have I missed out there?
Well, what you see on YouTube with some of the videos is the mechanics of havening. Like Dr. Rudin sometimes says this isn't havening. And what he means by that is it's knowing what to aim the havening techniques or treatment at. I'll give you an example.
Please do, yeah.
I was doing a talk in Dublin the other evening for a meetup group about anxiety and stress, and I did a live demo of event havening, the techniques that you see Paul do and myself online, those YouTube videos. Now the fear was for fear of the dentist. It was a severe fear a lady had for over 20 years. Now, the trick with getting great results with havening is knowing what to aim it at. If you aim it just at the symptoms, you can still get results, but they tend to be a little bit hit and miss. To get really great results to completely clear or resolve an anxiety-based issue, you want to find the root cause of what's causing the symptoms. So the lady's issue was severe fear of the dentist. When I asked her about it, she talked about gagging. and she's memories of when she was in school as a child, fearing the school dentist. But she kept talking about this gagging issue when she tried to go to the dentist. So I did a bit more of a history with her, and I asked her, was there a memory or a time when she felt she couldn't breathe or she gagged? And she said that she couldn't remember any per se. I did a bit more investigating on it. I said to her, look, think about anything even unrelated to the dentist. Doesn't it have to even got to do with the dentist? And then she suddenly remembered that she was getting her braces in when she was around 11 years of age, and she had to get a mold put into her mouth for the test, and she started choking, and she felt like she was suffocating, and she couldn't breathe. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That gave me the clue. So I asked her then just to think of that memory, because I wanted to check if the SUD score was high, if she was traumatized by that event. She said even as she started talking about it, she was feeling nervous and anxious. She was actually at a 9 on the scale of 0 to 10. So with the Havening demo, I didn't work on any dentist memories. I worked on that memory. The memory of the braces when she was 11, getting the mold in her mouth. She was at a 9 on the scale. She dropped down from a 9 to a 5 after one round. After another round, she went to a 1, then to a 0. When we debriefed it, the dentist issue was completely resolved. She actually left me a testimonial there the other day. We only did it a week ago. If you don't know what to aim the Havening treatment at, you could be havening memories on the dentist or stuff around the dentist and completely missing the encoding moment. Was that event. And people could spend session after session, be it havening or doing any other type of therapies, trying to resolve the dental phobia, but it's not really. The dental phobia, again, is just a symptom of that traumatic experience of getting the braces in. So when we train people in havening, this is part of what we're teaching them, how to pinpoint and identify the encoding moments, the root cause traumas that are causing the symptoms. And that's the difference that makes the difference to be highly effective when it comes to using havening. So obviously when we put a video online, be like Paul McKenna's video, and you have to remember that's also in the context of a book. So ideally it's always good to read the book before doing the treatment to get best results. But it's knowing what to aim the treatment at. That's the key to getting great results with it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes total sense. Yeah. And in fairness, in truth, that is arguably the key to any element of hypnotherapy, whatever name it's been given and whatever the process is. If you want long-term results, I would argue that's the key. I mean, a lot of approaches don't. Arguably, they just deal with the symptom and leave people open to symptom substitution somewhere down the line where it manifests itself somewhere else. So I couldn't agree with you more. That, of course, that's important. Just some of these are devil's advocate questions to answer people's things at home, which this next one is as well, okay? Because on the stuff that's out there about havening, it says that it's doing a combination of hemisync, synchronizing the left and right side of the brains, which is bullshit, because the truth is there is the idea of left and right sides of the brain is nothing but a construct used by psychiatry and psychology, and the truth is even the people who constructed that openly state they don't know. Nobody genuinely knows how the brain works. And this idea of CAT scans, brain scans, saying that different areas are activated, again, is bullshit, because the machinery is fundamentally flawed in itself. And the nature in which it's used fundamentally flaws it, because the person having the scans done knows they're having them done. It's impossible from a legal standpoint to do them without the person knowing they're being done. Thus, things like the Hawthorne effect can kick in because they know they're being observed for a purpose, and therefore you can naturally be kicking in the same kind of responses that you would through any placebo, because just because of the context, it's impossible to do clinical studies that rule that out, sadly. So apparently it's about synchronizing both sides of the brain. Yeah, conventional, genuine, non-complementary alternative medical fact-based stuff out there shows that essentially that's probably bollocks. It's to clear the amygdala. It's Amygdala D Potentiation. Now, there is some evidence out there that unfinished things like nested loop, if someone tells you a story, doesn't tell you the end of it, you're wanting to know what the end is, and then they start telling you another and don't tell you the end of that, and so on, which they do in NLP trainings, as some people watching will know. And then Richard Bandler is a master at it. He'll go back, he'll finish off that one, and then they start finishing them off. So you start getting this sense of relief. So when the last one's finished off, you feel like ecstatically a wonderful sense of relief, and you feel you've had a great speaker, and there is an argument, and there is some evidence that when something's left unfinished, whether it's a story that's not been finished, a job that's been left unfinished, or a trauma that's not been resolved, that the amygdala increases in size, and that using certain processes, and arguably Havening is proving itself to be one of them, that it is helping to release that effectively blockage from the amygdala, so it can then go off and be, just disappear off with normal things that don't need to bother the person anymore. That's kind of the theory, but as I say, in terms of the hemisync thing, nobody really knows what the brain's about. It's all just a construct, isn't it, really? If we're talking the truth.
Yeah, well, the hemisync thing has nothing got to do with Havening.
Somebody needs to update the bloody Wikipedia page then.
Yeah, it's nothing got to do with Havening. Havening is really about the neurobiology of sensory touch.
That's it. Go on. I went on the Wikipedia page this morning for a final mental refresh.
Yeah.
And it's mentioned right in the first couple of paragraphs. Somebody needs to update the page then.
Yeah.
Right, go on, tell me what it is then. Let's have the right facts.
Okay, if we want to look at the neurobiology of it, when someone has a traumatic experience, a few different things happen. We explain a lot of this in the training, but I'm going to give you the short version. Essentially, they're going to feel a sense of inescapable stress, they're going to feel trapped, and they're going to feel emotionally, obviously very distressed. Now, when that happens, there's electrical chemical changes in the brain. The brain can go up to 100 to 200 hertz per cycle per second. Norepinephrine, cortisol, adrenaline increase, and something called AMPA receptors. If you think of my hand as a neuron, these AMPA receptors get locked on. It's called phosphorylation. Get locked on to neurons in the lateral amygdala. Now, as you're having that distressing experience, those AMPA receptors are downloading everything that you're visually seeing, hearing, smelling, and emotionally and physically feeling. So the autonomic, the somatosensory, the cognitive, and the autonomic reactions you're feeling, heart palpitating, sweating, stomach churning, fear, anger, feeling trapped, all that's getting encoded in the amygdala through those receptors. So think of it like broadband, and all the sensory data is getting encoded. So the event's over, but those AMPA receptors are still there, and they sit inside the neurons in the lateral amygdala. Now, if something reminds you of that event by even thinking of it, you could be watching television and there could be a show or a movie about something that reminds you of that memory. It has the potential to fire those AMPA receptors off again. Once they fire, they start releasing cortisol and adrenaline into the system, and they create that fight, flight, or freeze response. These AMPA receptors are at the cause of most anxiety-based disorders and symptoms. It's like that's the phobia, that they are the negative association. So with havening, for example, that lady I worked with the gagging around the dentist, those AMPA receptors were encoded from the gagging with the braces. When she was going to the dentist, the overlap was there, caught in your mouth, opening up your mouth, and it was firing. So when we're havening someone and we ask them to think of the traumatic memory, what's happening in the brain is the AMPA receptors fire, and there's something called a phosphate molecule that's holding them stuck there. When they fire, they are activated for about 7 minutes. So we have a 7-minute window. This is from thousands of clinical observations. When we start using havening touch on the arms, the face, and the hands, it's producing something called a delta wave, or delta waves in the brain, which read at about 0.5 to 2 hertz per cycle per second.
What's the proof for that? Because can I just recap? Bat dung. Beta, alpha, theta, delta. Beta, generally speaking, is when somebody's wide awake and alert. Alpha is pretty much aligned with daydreaming. So,
yes.
Okay. Theta is stereotypically hypnosis or the hypnotic state, or roughly light sleep state, just going into it. Delta is classified, now I am playing devil's advocate because I say the brainwave patterns, there's enough evidence out that there's people who use this evidence and say they're real, but there's evidence that they're fundamentally flawed anyway. That said, if we go off conventional science, okay, then delta is real sleep. You're proper at sleep at night brainwave pattern. So how, with, you're saying delta, dead flippantly, but this havening is done eyes open without any conventional hypnotic induction process, which would generally be required to get to theta, which is hypnosis. What's the evidence that delta, just by what? Touching yourself?
Yeah, well, there was research done by a neuroscientific researcher called Mel Harper, where he hooked people up to EEG machines and electrodes, and they checked sensory touch. They did different parts of the body, the back of the hand, the knee, obviously the face, the arms, and different parts of the body. And they found that there's it's an amplitude of delta waves, an increase of delta waves from resting state. And what Mel Harper found...
Now like that sentence, right, let's pick up on that. So it's an increase in them, but you're not actually saying, or at least you didn't in that sentence then, you're not saying that they go into a proportionally different brainwave state that would be identified as being mainly delta, and therefore you're just saying that you're increasing the level.
Yeah, from resting state, from sitting here normally, when I start doing this, there's about 20 times more amplitude of delta waves from resting state. So you're increasing the amplitude of delta waves in the brain. And that's what helps us feel more calm and relaxed. So
an increase, I can accept that increase. It sounded like and looked like from what's seen on that there was a claim that doing this is going to put you into a delta brainwave state, and I honestly couldn't see how the frigging hell that could be justified.
So when we look at the neurobiology of sensory touch, you're increasing you're changing the electrical state of the brain by an increase in delta wave. When there's also an electrical change, there's a chemical change. The serotonin, oxytocin, and GABA also increase through sensory touch. Right.
Well, I was going to come to that next. So great that you went into it. The truth is, Law, that that's not anything. No, that's not to poo-poo it. Of course, it's incredibly special. There's nothing more special than human touch, hugging someone you love. I'm not poo-pooing that. I'm just contextually talking about this. Yeah, I've seen stuff on the internet. We go, yes, well, the proof that havening works is because these studies show that there's an increase in oxytocin and serotonin and stuff. Well, without any talking about the beach, lawn and stairs, without any eyes moving from left to right, without any of that, just whether it's rubbing like that movement, which is more like it, or whether it's like I was doing it, wrong, but still a bit over enthusiastic. That arguably is because you're not something you normally do, but hugging yourself effectively, that's what you're doing, giving yourself a hug. It could be argued that you are, because it's a weird thing to do, consciously it's disorientating and confusing, so therefore, arguably, it will bypass the critical faculty area of the brain, so therefore is having an immediate unconscious, subconscious effect. The unconscious, as we know, or at least some evidence suggests, doesn't know the difference between imagined or reality, so would likely confuse this as being someone else hugging you that you trust, because you obviously, when you're hugging yourself, you're not going to be panicking, and that when we are hugged, we naturally do produce more serotonin and oxytocin. So some could argue that this alone, forget any of the other elements of that event havening, is genuinely going to produce serotonin and oxytocin. Yes. Of course it is. Of course it is.
Yeah.
And in that genuine moment that there is a chemical increase of those feel-good chemicals, all you're really doing as the therapist is doing an important seeming ritualistic process that they are going to feel good about, because there has been a genuine chemical release that becomes anchored to whatever ritual, and therefore is more likely to make them feel better.
Well, what you're saying is parts of it are correct, but just to go back to, it's about precision. Like we know, of course, yeah, when people hug each other and rub each other or hold each other, that we feel better. That's why we do it.
As long as it's not some horrible, smelly pervert. If it's someone you trust, a father, then it's going to make you feel good. Yeah.
So, and that's what I'm saying. Like, havening is about the neurobiology of sensory touch. What we're talking about, those chemical changes in the brain. So, when we fire these AMP receptors off, the delta waves, the increase of delta, are going into the neurons. Like, there's a lot of detail with this. I just want to kind of summarize it so people can understand it, like more, I suppose, simplistically, without going into. There's a lot of detail here, but anyway, the delta waves go into the neurons with the AMP receptors. Okay, when they enter the neurons, they create a chemical called calcineurin inside the neurons with these AMP receptors. The calcineurin dephosphorylates something called a phosphate molecule off the receptors that's holding them stuck there. When that happens, those receptors start to disappear back into the neurons, and they're delinked, they're cleared.
Mm-hmm.
So when you then do your SUD score at the end, and someone's at a 0, they're now gone. So when someone closes their eyes and thinks of the memory, they can't process it the same way anymore. It's called Amygdala D Potentiation. So the cognitive components, the somatosensory, the autonomic components, and the emotional are all completely gone. That's why it delinks the emotion from the thought, the memory. That's why people can't access the feeling anymore. It's cleared, it's removed. The amygdala can't fire anymore. It's like pulling a plug. There's no, it's synaptic depotentiation. There's no electrical charge now going anymore to the nervous system because the AMP receptors are gone. It's been delinked, it's clear. They can't fire anymore. So when someone then again see something that reminds them of the trauma or the phobia or the panic attacks, it doesn't activate the anxiety reaction anymore because the AMP receptors are now gone. So when the amygdala sees something, so that girl goes back to the dentist, she's going to be fine because there's no AMP receptors to fire it off from that memory of the gagging. It's now cleared. We've actually changed the electrical chemical landscape of our brain. And the reason Havening works so quickly is because we're working at that electrical chemical level. Even Dr. Reardon calls it electroceuticals, which is an interesting way of putting it. So that's, I suppose, a summary of how traumas get encoded and how we can de-encode them with Havening. And that's how event Havening works. There are different techniques, but that's essentially how we use event Havening to get seemingly remarkable.
The fact is, it works, okay, right? There's no doubt. I've seen stuff, and I'm aware of people who've had it done on themselves. And the simple fact is, I'm saying this categorically to viewers before I play the next devil's advocate bit. I know for a fact that this works for the people that take it seriously and do what they're told to do. But that's the same with any process, any therapy. If someone gets forced to go along to see a therapist and they don't do it properly and they're not really ready for change, then it's unlikely to work for them. But that's the same for any protocol, any modality, So just to play devil's advocate, SUDS. It's always used in a lot of therapies, whether it's tapping therapies. Beforehand, on a scale of 0, I'm going to try and do this, and I'm going to try and keep central in my little picture here. Otherwise, when it splits us in half, people won't see my hands, and then what I'm trying to explain won't make any bloody sense. So I wouldn't normally be in such a weird position if I was talking to a client. I'm going to try and fit in this here, but effectively. Okay, just close your eyes. Take a few moments to get a sense or a feeling of how it was when it was its worst in the past. As though you're watching it as an observer, just give us a blah, whatever bullshit you say. Okay, now open your eyes. Now on a scale of 0 to 10, 0 down here, nothing, and all the way up here is 10, the worst it ever was in the past. When it used to really bother you, like pulling your hair out really, really, terribly bad. Where up that scale right now would you say the number is? How high up is it? And they say a number, whatever. 7, 8, 9, 10. They give a number. Whatever number they say obviously is right for them because that's what they believe to be true. You do whatever seeming important, a ritualistic important seeming process in the middle, whether it's tapping spectacles, testicles, wallet, watch, whether it's flipping, you're hypnotized, whether it's imagine the colour shape of it, change the texture of it, modality changing NLP, or whether it's hugging yourself, moving your eyes to the side, whether it's getting a torch, EMDR, and going, look at the light. Don't matter. Something happens in the middle, which frankly is just to kill some time and give them something to believe in, some important seeming ritualistic process. And at the end, they open their eyes, they're out of that if it's hypnosis or the break state, and then you say, try, which is MLQA's law of reversed effort, suggesting that they're not going to be able to as well, is inbuilt there. But try to get a sense of a feeling as it was in the past and just notice how different it is right now. Give them a few seconds and then immediately come in with, so on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 up here being the worst it ever was in the past, like pulling your hair out, feeling almost suicidal, the worst thing ever it could be up there. Down here being 0, gone completely. Where right now do you find that number is? And if you watch that back, so I don't have to explain it all, if you do it the way I've just done, which a lot of NLP trainers don't teach to do it that way, but if you watch them when they're doing their stage demonstrations, especially Richard Bandley, he does do that. Now, I overemphasized it there, so it wasn't subtle at all. But the first time around, 0 down here, 10 up there, how high up the scale is it? Second time around, how low is it? 0 down here, gone completely, embedded command, it's gone. The bit in the middle doesn't matter. If you use the Sudge trick like that properly, they're going to say a lower number because they're obliged to. The moment they say a lower number, they consciously go, wow, it's a different number. Something must have changed, which has bypassed any critical faculty resistance because they've just said to themselves and believe the number's changed. They can't question it because they've said it. And the moment they realise the number's changed, they have to accept something's changed. And in that moment, that second, that instant, they believe something's changed at a conscious and unconscious, hemisync, if you want to use fancy word, on all levels, then in that moment, their reality has changed. And anything else sorts itself out. It could be argued.
Well, it could be argued, and some different approaches might work that way, and different therapists might use different types.
I'm arguing this works that way. There's always suds done at the beginning and at the end. And if you watch the Paul McKenna DVD, there is the non-verbals of this time round your number's going to be lower. Or at the start it's higher, which helps ramp up the pain so you get a higher number. So even if there wasn't really a genuine change happening, the number's going to, because of the emphasis non-verbally, be lower anyway, because you ramped it up to start with. But because they perceive it as the number's gone lower, in that moment they say to themselves, bloody hell, there's been a genuine change. And the moment they say that and believe it in every fibre of their body, then it becomes their reality.
I appreciate why you might think that or view it that way. Well, what's interesting when you actually look at the history of havening, it all started back in 2001 with Paul McKenna and Dr. Rudin walking through Central Park, and Paul talking to Dr. Rudin about tapping, TFT.
Yeah, because he was big into field therapy at the time.
Yeah, Paul trained with Dr. Roger Callahan, the creator of TFT, and Paul used to use it quite a bit back in the day. So, so Paul then was talking to Dr. Rudin about this. Dr. Rudin didn't really know anything about tapping per se, and Dr. Rudin started getting curious about, well, why would tapping work and why does even EMDR work? And Dr. Rudin went off and did 10 years research on this. You also have to look at where this is coming from. Like the creators of havening, Dr. Ron and Stephen Rudin. Like if you look at Dr. Ron Rudin, he's a Harvard University academic, Alex. He's got the largest private medical practice in New York City. And he's a neuroscientific researcher, and he's wrote, a couple of books and it's been published in various scientific journals. So he comes with pretty high credentials and neuroscientific background. And with respect, he probably understands a lot of this more than you or me. But what
I beg to disagree there. It doesn't mean just because he's good from that medical side doesn't mean he has a clue about verbal suggestion, non-verbal suggestion, waking hypnosis, all of which are massively a part of havening, tapping, the bloody lot of them, because you can't remove the fact the placebo effect is the biggest part of conventional medicine. So let's not make it sound like
I agree, there are, of course, elements of that, but like we know with EMDR, when you do the lateral eye movement from Dr. Rudin's work, that's actually producing delta waves in the brain. When you move your eyes from left to right, from left to right, it's creating delta. And
what happens when you get them to move up, down instead of left to right?
Well, we don't use that approach in havening.
Well, surely you tested it.
We
if you test things, you find out what's most effective. So if left to right is what gets the delta, surely at some point
we know
you test it up and down to see what the difference is.
Moving eyes higher produces more alpha. Moving them more laterally at an even level produces more delta.
Well, I was more interested in more, as opposed to going left to right, horizontally, going vertically. Yeah, vertically is the word, isn't it? Up and down, anyway. Up and down. What difference that would make to the process?
Well, there is an element of distraction when you're doing eye movement eye movements as well. You're distracting people. You're taking them away from the memory, or the negative. Remember we talked about the SUD. Then suddenly they're moving eyes this way, that way. Even tapping, you're moving your eyes 360-degree clockwise.
I completely agree. There's an element of distraction in them all. Yeah.
Yes. So once again, the neuroscientific theory behind havening with the distraction. When we do the event havening, we start the sensory touch, but we also then imagine the person to walk on the beach or through a park, sing Jingle Bells, Happy Birthday. The idea behind the distraction is that it displaces the trauma out of the working memory. And it's also, in that moment when you're reliving it, it's tricking the brain to a degree by bringing you back to the trauma and reliving it and feeling it, but then it's giving you an escape as well in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the other side of what makes it work. And with the sensory touch as well, it's bringing you to a safe place.
Now, the sensory touch part, arguably, I would argue, is one of the most powerful elements of havening, other than the placebo effect. Because it's a whole therapeutic thing in conventional hospitals and care homes. There are people get starved of touch, especially,
Yes.
And that itself, as we said, does genuinely release. There are genuine chemical changes in the body that are not placebo. They are genuine because they're already physiologically linked there. So even if it is just jumping on them and anchoring those good feelings to the suggestion of an important process, it frankly doesn't really matter, viewers. The point is, it works. And this is me just trying to balance out the fact that I've been playing devil's advocate for a while. The point is, it works. And if you go on Stephen's YouTube channel and watch the videos, you will see people who are either A, incredibly good actors and actresses. They're not. I'm just saying that there's only two options here, that either A, they're incredibly good actors and actresses, or B, a dramatic, emotional change takes place in a very short period of time using one or more of the havening processes. Okay? It has to be one of those two. And trust me, I'm more inclined to go on they genuinely, truly believe they've had a change, and therefore they have had. Simple as. So all this devil's advocate stuff about placebo, suggestion, it's important to look at, I think, as therapists, because I think the more you understand that maybe your non-verbal suggestion of the fact that you pointed down visually lower the second time on SUDS could help them give you a lower number than they were going to do. So you don't have to do as many rounds or cycles. So that, albeit it might only save you a minute or two, but still that might be a minute or two that quicker for the client to get to the feeling that they consider to be appropriate to leave it at. But the fact is, it works. If it didn't, there wouldn't be the people who've had changes that you'll see on. What is your YouTube channel for people watching, by the way?
Well, if you go to my website, travershypnosis.com,
which is the link that's here.
Yeah, they can click on the YouTube icon there. There's videos there of self-havening. There's videos from my training where you see me do live demos. There's one with a fear of flying, a lady. She's actually a psychotherapist. Very severe fear of flying. She'd done various psychotherapy, counseling, meditation to help resolve it over the years. It didn't resolve it. She still had the anxiety. And within 7 minutes of the event havening, the fear of the flying completely resolved. Her testimonial as well is on my YouTube listing in Ireland.
That's the thing, results count. As I do play devil's advocate in these interviews, although quite often a lot of the playing devil's advocate is genuinely my beliefs and experiences. But the simple fact is, if it works and helps the client, does it matter how the job's getting done, as long as you're not physically, emotionally, or psychologically or spiritually damaging them in any way, which you're not. with this. Simply
Yeah.
not
Well,
possible.
I would certainly say from my experience and from working with clients, havening is not a placebo, because when I get clients coming into me, I remember especially at the beginning, going back 7, 8 years ago, Alex, when I started using havening, because I was primarily using NLP, hypnotherapy, anchoring techniques, fast phobia cure, a lot of what we're already we've already trained in many years ago. And I remember, like, even to myself thinking, God, I'm going to have to stroke someone's arm, tell someone to work on a traumatic memory and ask them to stroke their arms and sing happy birthday. This is a bit crazy, it's a bit bizarre. And even to this day, when clients come into me and I explain a little bit about havening and what we're going to do to treat a phobia or their panic attacks, there's very little placebo, in the sense people they're skeptical, they're cynical, they don't believe it, they think it sounds bizarre, and they're more or less like, well, okay, I'll give it a go, but
if you actually study the placebo law, that state of mind is more likely to make the placebo work and heighten it, because the more ridiculous the important seeming ritualistic process is, which is why with so-called tapping, I take the piss and do it as spectacles, hit just below the belly button, remember it as testicles, wallet watch, can't believe I'm saying this and I'm getting paid for it, it must be my birthday. And I do that 3 times, never fails, because of the Sudge trick that I explained before.
Well, I've used tapping. I'm certified in EFT and TFT, and I've seen
it's placebo.
Yeah, but I've seen it. Well, that's once again, many people would dispute that.
But it works. It doesn't matter. But it is. But it works. And in terms of learning, the simple fact is there's different placebos, different ways of getting there. Stephen will, disagree with that part probably, but even so, even though I'm saying that, I would still say it's good to know different ways of getting there, because not everything works 100% of the time with 100% of the people. Not straight away. It might do on a different day if they're in a different state of mind. So sometimes you might need a different route to get there. So the more different ways you can learn, the better, which is why I would say go to travershypnosis.com. Link will be directly below this video. If you're that lazy, you don't want to type it in, you can just click on it, go straight there. Definitely click on the YouTube logo, go and watch some of the videos, see for yourself, without my cynical, sometimes tongue-in-cheek, sometimes serious devil's advocate comments. Watch the things and see for yourself. Look, with some of them, whatever you think it is or whyever you think it works, you can't take away the fact that you can see in somebody's face them go from having had years of trauma or negativity in a certain area to feeling as though a massive weight's been lifted off the shoulders, and you can see it, and you can see a genuine, there's a difference in their face. An actor couldn't act it that well, quite simply. Something has genuinely happened to them. And clearly when you're watching those videos, there's something that's happened to them was, whatever the underlying thing is, was havening, because there'll be the videos that you're watching. So with that in mind, we're getting close to the end. I want to ask you the question I ask everybody, and thank you, Stephen. You were so. Do you know what? I have so much respect for the people who've been on Hypnosis Week so far. When this goes out, which is going to go out actually later today, I'm going to put it out. That will be edition number 28. And the 28 people who've been interviewed so far, well, gone out, including yourself when it goes out today, and the people who've been interviewed that are going out over coming weeks, I have so much respect for, because you knew full well that I'm going to ask the purposely awkward questions that most people probably wouldn't do. And I genuinely believe that someone who believes truly in what they teach and do you know if they truly believe it, if they're prepared to answer the awkward questions. There's a lot of people out there who train certain things that wouldn't dare, but then, well, I'm not going to mention names because it was private emails. I'm not allowed to, GDPR, but there are some people I've approached and their answer has been, no, I'm not setting myself up to be asked this, that, the other, accused of this, that, the other. Well, you know what? Any little bit of respect I might have had for those people, gone. You mustn't believe in what you do enough. I have so much respect for you, Stephen, and everyone else who's been on this show, because not only have you been prepared to accept the awkward questions, but you put up a bloody good argument and a very good logical explanation that only someone who truly believes from the experience of what they've done would be able to do. So, respect, sir. Truly.
And like I just mentioned, because obviously it's happening soon, my next 2-day certified havening training it is on in Dublin, beside Dublin Airport, so it's quite easy to fly in if anyone wants to fly in for Europe and the UK. It's on the 25th and 26th of April. I would recommend for people to go to the Certified Havening training page on my website and look at all the testimonials and reviews from other therapists, hypnotherapists, psychotherapists, counsellors who've done the training. And yeah, there's also a TV interview there that I did about havening. So there's some really good information there. And if anyone wants to have a chat with me, they're interested in doing the training, I'm happy to do a 20-minute, if you like, consultation call. Just answer any questions about the training.
Can't say fairer than that, can you?
So
that's the difference between those out there in this industry who talk the talk and those who actually walk the walk. So if this interests you, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people watching this it will interest, because you will have seen, I know I keep mentioning Paul McKenna, that's purely because he's kind of, certainly in England, the televisual media face of havening.
Interestingly, Paul's coming to Dublin in June. We're running a havening conference in the Gresham Hotel on O'Connell Street. The doctors are flying over, Dr. Ronald and Stephen Rood, and Paul McKenna's coming over. Right. And we're running a full 2-day conference, and that's for anyone who's done the 2-day havening practitioner course. So it's more advanced, specialized areas, maybe looking at chronic pain, how to use havening, with hypnotherapy and NLP, how to integrate it. Like Paul does that quite a bit, the latest neuroscience and research. So it's really 2 days of the latest advancements in neuroscience and havening.
If people jump on board for the April 2020 training with your good self, they'd then be eligible to be able to go to that.
Yeah.
Excellent. So the link's below, by the way, just click on that. But before we go, because we've gone slightly over the hour, the question I ask everybody at the end, and it's interesting how we get some quite similar answers, which, and then we've had some that are way off the scale. There's no right or wrong. The imaginary question is this. Somebody knocks on your door right now, Stephen, and they're stood there with, we'll just say, a copy of Dave Alman's green cover or blue cover book, depending on which edition you've got. And they say, Mr. Travers, I've just read this book. I've not attended any live trainings with anyone yet. I've not watched any DVDs, no videos online. I've literally just read this book. That's all I know so far. But you know what? I think I want to become I'm going to say mind therapist, because it doesn't have to be hypnotherapist, does it? It could be that they decide they want to go down the havening route. But I want to make sure that I can be the best technical mind therapist I can become. But also, obviously, you know, if I'm going to spend so much time on this, I want to turn it into a business. So I actually want to be able to, you know, pay the bills and stuff. What would your top 3 tips be to them in terms of moving forward from that point where they've just knocked on your door and said, look, I've read this book. I want to become a therapist. I want to become the most best technical proficient therapist I can so I can get results for my clients, but also I want to, you know, make a business out of this. What were the top 3 things that jump into your head you'd tell them?
I'd say work in an area or a niche that you are genuinely passionate about. So do what you love what you do.
Hypnosis Week Bingo. That's one that's come up from literally 95% of people. Nice one.
Right, that's key, because if you want longevity in this business, especially with all the challenges in any business, you need that passion for it, or you just won't last.
Yeah.
Right. From a practical perspective as well, find a niche or an area that there's actually a market for. So there's no point going into a niche or an area where there's no demand. You might be passionate about it, but there's just little to no demand for it. You want to have a business, so test and measure and do your research and analysis before you pump time and money, be it in the websites and marketing, to make sure there's actually a viable business there.
Excellent. I think a lot of people miss that one. Yeah.
It's really important. I've seen therapists do it. You know, they might be passionate about some area that might be a bit more obscure, and then they can't make a business from it. The third one, I would say, train with the best people you can find, people who resonate with you, who you can connect with, and work with clients and practice. Do the work, practice, because you need experience to be effective as a therapist. You need to see clients and work with people to get good at what you're doing. So they'd be the main three things.
Excellent advice. All of which I completely agree with, as do the majority of guests that have been on Hypnosis Week, because it's interesting to see how, when you get to the essence, the core, the leaders in the field, which I'm fortunate to have been interviewing, there's so many similarities between what they say, and that's not a coincidence. It's because clearly that's what actually works. So with that in mind, get yourself over to travershypnosis.com. The link's below this video. Go and check out the courses and the videos and all that kind of stuff. Contact Stephen if you want more information. He's very kindly offered that he will indeed speak to you. And thank you once again, Stephen. You've been an absolute star. Thank you very much,
Alex. Thank you for having me.
And everyone, we'll see you next week. Well, at the latest, we'll see you next week. But now and again, I do release some during the week as well. But there'll be another edition of Hypnosis Week out quite soon. Bye for now.